Well, hey everybody, welcome back.
Hey, everybody.
So today's episode is going to be a really fun one for us. So we have a very special guest. Guests, you're right, guests. But this is a very good friend of the show, and they are friends,
plural.
Anyway, but they're podcasters just like us. See, there you go. And this Eric and Michelle Connor from We Believe to You, and they're a great podcast. In fact, I think for us, they're so similar to us. They kind of have a very down to earth feel to them. They kind of cover everything paranormal just like we do. But they're just great to listen to. They have a great banter between them, and they share a good breadth of knowledge between each other. So it comes across very, very gracefully and very naturally. It does help that they are brother and sister.
Yeah, I was going to say we need to specify they're not a married couple like we are.
Correct.
They are brother and sister.
They are brother and sister. But yeah, they're awesome to listen to. I highly suggest you subscribe or check them out. Follow them on anywhere the podcasts are available. And if you want, we're on episode 135 on their show, oddly enough, called Generation X Paranormal Podcast. Yeah,
should be easy to find.
Should be easy. But
it'll give you a chance to get to know us a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. And also get to know them because they're fantastic people, and I think you really like the show. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and bring them on. Hey everybody, we have Eric and Michelle. How you guys doing?
Doing good.
Awesome. Well, you guys were gracious enough to have us on your show. What was it? Episode? We had it written
135.
Down. Yeah, 135. So
I'm glad you remembered.
Yeah, well, to be honest, we did look it up because I couldn't remember exactly which one it was.
And wrote it down.
There you go.
Yeah, and wrote it down. But no, you guys were gracious enough to have us on your show. We had a blast, so we figured, hey, let's run it back and go for the opposite direction this time. So, but if our listeners don't know, these are podcasters just like us, and they have an amazing show. We Believe to You, and we're fans. We listen.
We do.
And but anyway, on that, I'll start with Eric. What made you? Well, I think let's start with Michelle because I think Michelle, you started it, right?
Yeah.
So let's start with Michelle. What brought you to start? What turned on the mic? What made you get started?
Well, the pandemic, first off, I feel like. But I love talking about all things paranormal and woo-woo, aliens, UFOs, ghosts, like anything, everything, cryptids. And I always loved talking about it. Those were always my favorite conversations. But I didn't really have that as far as like friend circle wise, I guess. And I was always afraid of judgment, but I knew that the one person that wouldn't ever judge me was my brother. And we would always talk about it, talk about these topics. And my favorite thing is always when people share their experiences as well. So we just decided that, hey, let's do this podcast. I didn't want to do it by myself. I'm not really good at talking with people. I've gotten better. But my brother was going to be that like icebreaker for me to kind of ease into it. And it did help a lot. And I've just loved, hearing everyone's, experiences and stories, and then being able to do deep dives into topics that, again, that I love, and being able to share that knowledge with my brother and vice versa. And yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, we definitely understand that, kind of having that, I guess, that sounding board to talk about things. So we totally get that part. And Eric, I mean, I know you probably didn't want to do this at first. What made you decide, hey, all right, let's just jump in and go for it?
Actually, no, it was quite the opposite. I had always wanted to do a podcast. I just never knew what I wanted to do it on because like I'm super into gaming, so I always I thought about maybe doing something like that. I'm also really into movies, but I'm not really like a movie critic. I don't like to, everything I watch is because I want to watch it. And for the most part, I like. So I'm like, I wouldn't be a good movie critic. And then Michelle was like, "Hey, I want to do this. I have this podcast idea, but I don't have anybody to record with or anything like that." And I was like, "Well, I could do a podcast with you." And like she said, we always kind of grew up watching paranormal shows.
Yeah.
We were into the paranormal, but we didn't really talk about it a whole lot. Then as we started getting older, we talked about it more. And then right before we did the podcast, we were literally having 2 hour long conversations on the phone about the paranormal or things that were happening to us in our lives. And we were like, well, why don't we just do this? You know, she wanted to do it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. So we started getting into how to get into it and stuff like that. And that's how this happened. As pandemic was around, I was still having to work because, you know, I'm a nurse. So yeah, it was just a thing that kind of fell into our laps, and we just rolled with it.
Sure. And on that, Eric, if you and don't worry, Michelle, I'm gonna point the camera at you too here in a second. But if you want to go ahead and talk a little bit about kind of your background and what, tell us a little bit about yourself.
So yeah, I'm a nurse. I've been a nurse for about 14 years, more or less.
Wow.
I used to work at a nursing home, so I had a lot of experiences in the nursing home. And then I started doing pediatric home health. And even in some of the homes that I've been in, I've had experiences. I've had experiences at home. Like I said, we grew up watching Unsolved Mysteries. And then as we got older, Ghost Hunters and then Ghost Adventures and just anything paranormal, we were all about it. And my dad had us watching The X-Files and things like that, which is kind of sort of where we got the title for our show. So yeah, that's basically it. We're full-time nurse, part-time podcaster.
Nice. Yeah. And they both probably take all your time.
Yes, they do.
All right, Michelle, hit us up.
Yeah. I now officially I was a cake decorator, a nanny, and a martial arts instructor, sometimes all three at the same time for many years. But just recently, about like 6 months ago, went full time with my business, sell, electroform jewelry, candles, and my artwork.
Cool.
But yeah, I mean, just like Eric said, just being super into all these weird shows, Tales from the Crypt, also Are You Afraid of the Dark, going even further back as far as like Nickelodeon and stuff.
Yeah.
And yeah, X-Files, Unsolved Mysteries. It's just, I feel like we were like set in that path of we were going to do this at some point, even in elementary school, just, getting all the ghost and alien books that I could possibly get my hands on and just reading. And I don't know why, but filling my brain with that kind of knowledge is so much easier and fun for me than math. I don't know. Yeah, things like that. Yeah.
For sure. I remember, I think the first book I ever read as a kid that was, I'm a lot older, but was a book called Blue Lights. I don't know if you guys ever remember that, but it was like, it was one of those.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I know.
So they're not going to.
Yeah. But it was one of those like book things. Like I don't know, if you read so many books, you get prizes and everything. Well, it was one of those on that list, and I remember reading it. It scared the crap out of me. I mean, yeah, go figure, right?
Yeah.
But, it's cool. It's good for you. It's good for the kids.
Yeah.
But, okay, so we started the podcast off in the pandemic, which I know so many other podcasts kind of got started. As things go, kind of like with us too, things evolve, things change. What, two questions, will be a two-parter, but one is, what did you expect to happen with podcasts as far as like, how it would help you with your own personal experiences in general, and kind of the direction that it took that did happen that you were really pleased with?
Do you want to go first?
I think I just completely blanked. I'm sorry.
Okay.
It's
Go ahead, Michelle.
Yeah. I don't know. I think everyone kind of has this idea that like, yeah, my podcast is just going to blow up and it's going to, in
Right.
6 months and get going. And after 3 years of this, we've kind of like lowered our expectations, I guess. But what I do love about this is, well, one, I feel like even if no people were listening, my brother and I would still be doing this,
Sure.
because
Right.
it's turned into a way for us to connect and literally talk for like 2 hours at least, minimum once a week, if not more. So I feel like, I think I can speak for Eric too, said, or it's made us closer.
Yeah.
Just keeping in contact and stuff, and especially being, like almost 6 hours apart or away from each other. And honestly, the thing that I was most scared about, like talking to strangers and talking to people, I've come to realize that when it's a topic or a subject that I love, like sometimes you can't shut me up, and and I actually do enjoy talking to people, and they're not as scary as I, imagine that they would be. Luckily, we've had some really amazing guests and stuff like that. So, yeah,
I can identify with that.
Yeah.
Very much so. Yes.
Yeah.
So I'm very much like talking to new people. Like once I get started, it's kind of hard to stop me from talking, I guess, and especially in like daily life. So I've always, like Michelle said, I've always liked to hear people's stories and share my stories. And I think when we first started the podcast, we had the idea that we would be just interviewing people like
Oh,
constantly.
yeah.
That was the only thing we had planned on doing. Um, then once we realized how hard it was to get guests on, especially as a brand new podcast,
Sure.
we kind of had to make a little shift in what we were wanting to do, and we decided to start doing our what we call now our stories of high strangeness, which
hmm
that was originally gonna just be listener stories, so people who didn't want to be on the podcast but wanted to share their stories, we would read those. But now we've kind of gotten stories off the internet, and people who've sent them in to us and stuff like that. We've done that as well, and then we incorporated deep dives, which I love because, like Michelle said, she liked looking into a bunch of stuff, so she liked learning a bunch of new stuff and a bunch of new things, and I feel like she's got this wealth of knowledge on all these different topics, and I don't. Not as much as she does. Like I know some things about some things, but she seems to know a lot about a lot of things. So,
Give
uh,
me too much credit.
well, I mean that's how I feel, and like every time we have a guest on, a guest mentions a name or mentions an event that happened, and she's like, "Oh yeah," and like she can jump in. And I'm like, "Well, I've never heard of this before. Let me sit back and listen." Or we're doing a deep dive, and sometimes I'll ask her, "Hey, what do you want to, or what do you want me to deep dive?" Because I have no idea, and she'll be like, "Okay, how about these topics?" And choose one, and then I'll deep dive that, and I'm learning, and then I get to teach our audience if they don't know, and it's a good
Sometimes
experience
me
for
too.
me. Yeah.
Sure.
Mhm.
And I
It's a
think it
good.
probably. Oh, go ahead.
Mhm. No, I
I
was
was gonna
just gonna
say.
say it's.
You go ahead,
I was
please.
just gonna say, it's fun. I mean, fun for me to be able to do those kinds of things, and like she said, get to talk to her for, at least once a week, and because we were always really close growing up, and now we're so far apart that sometimes you just don't have that chance to talk to your family or whatever, and this is that opportunity that we have. So
That's awesome. Yeah, and especially kind of with when you mention the maybe not known as much. She's the brains behind the operation.
yeah.
So
Well,
uh,
I researched the stuff.
yeah,
I don't know it all.
she
Yeah.
researches really well though, and then sometimes she'll pull something out, and I'll be like, I don't remember that. I don't know. And yeah, it does kind of make you bring your own A game,
Mhm.
but yeah, I get it. We kind of do this too.
Mhm.
Having been married as long as we have, you look for something to kind of change things up, set the narrative differently, and that's kind of what started us too, but
Hmm.
also with personal experiences.
Yeah.
But on that, taking a cue from my guests, tell us a little bit about your first paranormal experience. I'll let you go ahead and start, Eric.
Okay. Yeah, I think the first one that I have really ingrained in my head is one where actually happened in this room that I'm in right now.
Mm.
Michelle and I used to share this room. We had twin beds, and I remember I was asleep, and then all of a sudden I woke up, and our door was open. We always used to have the doors open. This door right here. We used to have
Nice
that
visual.
door was like, thank you, wide open, and all of a sudden I remember waking up and I see this figure standing in the doorway, but it wasn't a black figure. It was this like rainbow colored figure. It was like super bright and just, standing in the doorway. And I started obviously freaking out because I had no idea what this was. So I'm trying to call out to my parents and I'm trying to yell and I'm trying to yell and I can't get anything out. Like I can't scream until finally after, what seemed like a good while trying to yell, I was able to, yell mom, dad, and they like I yelled it a couple times and then they come running in, and as soon as my dad walks through the doorway, he kind of walks through the figure and it just disappears. And they come to me and they're like, "What's going on?" And I kind of explained to them, but I don't remember what they told me or how they tried to comfort me. They might have just said like, "It's okay, you were just dreaming," or something like that. But yeah, that's like the first one that I remember that like really has stuck with me all these years.
And I wonder, so I don't, it's so
It's like
hard.
an aura.
Yeah, that's what I was just kind of thinking too. Like, and I don't know if you've looked further into that to kind of get more explanation or not, but yeah, I kind of think that's like
That's interesting.
yeah, it's so much different than like your, amorphous black blob or, some black shadow, which tons and tons of that.
Or an evil face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Flying from you out of the
In the
closet.
back of the closet.
Yeah.
You'll have to go listen to their episode if you want to know what that is.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a callback.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a deep track. But yeah, that's interesting because you are always just assume everything's going to be, a dark shadow. So, that would freak me out even now, even having had the experience that we've all collectively have had, that's something I'm not used to seeing. So if there was a rainbow type aura, that would definitely alert my radar.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I know something that Michelle and I have talked about, like even before we started getting into the podcast, was like angels and stuff like that. I know people have different ideas of what angels are,
Sure.
but like,
Light beings.
yeah.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
these different angels, like they put off different color auras, like you were saying. So I think the one that has like that rainbow kind of color figure is an angel called, if correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle, Uriel.
I don't even remember anymore. I
Okay,
think so.
well,
I think you're
it's
right.
Uriel, yeah.
Sorry.
That's awesome.
And so then as we've had more conversations with more people and have gone into deep dives and stuff, maybe an alien,
Yeah.
I was thinking that next.
Yeah.
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 So because Michelle, I mean, it might not be her first paranormal experience, but she does have some that may have possibly been aliens in this house and in this room. So like, after having
Interesting.
those conversations with her, it's kind of like, okay, well, was it an alien maybe?
Right.
I don't know.
Yeah, and we had a guest on a couple episodes ago, Preston Dennett, and some of the stuff he would talk about would be that they kind of bleed together. Sometimes
Yeah.
Mhm.
ghosts, aliens, things like that.
Yeah. Different like angel type
right,
beings. It
like
was
you said, light beings.
Yeah.
yeah.
Right.
Really
Yeah.
didn't. I mean, never heard it before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll say that much.
That's for
Yeah.
sure.
I definitely feel like the longer I've done this podcast, well, even more so, I have absolutely no idea what is going on outside of like what we can see in this, three-dimensional world.
Right.
But yeah, I totally went from like, okay, yeah, angels to wait, light beings, wait, aliens? Like, is
Right.
it,
Right.
and so
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, maybe angels are actually just light beings or they're, extraterrestrials and stuff like that. And yeah, some of my experiences that I was like, oh, angels. I'm like, fuck, maybe it was like an abduction
Right.
or
Right.
something like that. I'm like,
It shifts the
Nah,
narrative sometimes because it blurs the lines.
it
Mhm.
really does, yeah. Which is like scary and also just like it's all one big spider web and we have absolutely no idea. Like I don't think
Yes.
we're meant to get answers in our lifetime. Like I
No,
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, and as much as we, especially with our shows and anybody who taps into this lifestyle, you're always searching for that
Mhm.
answer. That is the thing. Everybody wants this answer. But I think that's the journey is much more fun than just finding the answer, you know?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right, Michelle, you're on.
So this is definitely one of those memories that it's like, I want to just say like, oh, maybe it was a dream, but it is still so clear in my brain that something happened, and I don't know like how it happened or what, but and I'm pretty sure it did, and it was not a dream because of how clear it was. But basically, we had this dog who would, if we left toys out, she would get into them and like rip them apart. And I was looking for this like Barbie doll, I think, and we have a 2-story house. So if you open the door, you can go down the stairs or up the stairs. I don't know why I was wanting to go downstairs, because honestly, our downstairs has always been like super freaky, off limits. Like it's always had a weird vibe to it. The house that Eric is still in, but so I don't know why I was going downstairs by myself, but I distinctly remember the light being on, and it was like a spotlight on my doll. And I was like, oh, there it is. So I go down the stairs to pick it up, and I look at it, and my dog had got to it, like literally chewed off like its head. It's all like mangled and just, done. And I'm looking at it kind of disappointed, and then I just hear, help me. And I was like, I got goosebumps all over again. But I heard a female, or girl's voice say, help me. I personally thought it came from my doll, because that's where my brain went. So I toss it and like run up the stairs like a demon's chasing me, right? And I remember that my cousin was over and they were playing video games in our bedroom, the room that Eric is in. So I was like, oh, it was them. They're just messing with me. So I like burst into the door, and I was like, hey, like, why'd you guys do that? You scared me. And they're like, what are you talking about? We've been playing video games. And yes, like thinking back on it, there's no way that they could have like gotten back into the room, sat down, closed the door, and without me hearing it, and like kept, playing their video games. So I know that I was 100% by myself. I don't think now that it was like my doll that was possessed and saying, help me. I don't know if, we talked about, or we've mentioned before that our downstairs was very like spooky, creepy, and we had people would stay over and stay downstairs, say like they would hear whistling and they would hear, bumps in the night and stuff like that. So I don't know if it was necessarily the doll or if it was just a disembodied, voice that I heard, and it freaked me out and I ran upstairs.
That's creepy.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna flat out just say this. I wanted to vomit during that because I hate dolls.
Me too.
I hate dolls with a passion. They freak me out.
Well, she has a reason at least.
Yeah.
It is what it is. So her grandma, I'm so sorry, because I know someone will tell her anyway, because everybody listens. It's our family, of course, but her grandma's got this really cool doll in the living room, and she loves it. It's a very nice doll, and it's, it's one of those with a porcelain head. And I may have brought this up on your show or not. I can't remember. But every time we go over there, I swear that thing's going to come to life and come running at me, and I'm going to punt it right through the window. They just scare the hell out of me. Man.
Yeah.
It's actually kind of funny because I just finished watching The Boy today.
Oh,
yeah.
Yikes. Yeah, if it were me and I was in your position, I probably would have passed out and then soiled myself and then had somebody have to come and take the doll out.
Well, so I don't know like where this aligns, because I know I saw Child's Play way too young, and that kind of like put the fear of dolls in me, and still to this day, like I get goosebumps and I cringe, kind of thing. Or yes, I think that they're gonna come to life, but. So I don't know when I saw that movie and like when I had this experience with the doll, because I definitely feel like I was younger. I probably should not have been watching Child's Play at like 5 years old, right? So that probably didn't happen. But I have always, I feel like that doll experience that I had, and then watching Child's Play, it's just like, I'm done. Like I still have that fear of doll. We actually went to the Zach Baggins, like the Haunted Museum, and he has, I think Peggy the doll in there. In a room, like, and I think there's like a whole bunch of other creepy dolls in that room, and that was one room that I skipped, and I was like, I'll wait outside, because I did the Dybbuk box, went into the severed head, did like all these other things, could not do the the haunted doll.
Yeah. you could literally walk me into like Penhurst Asylum with a spirit box. Yeah, I'll get a little scared. You know, if things come through, you get that little, ooh, okay.
Yeah.
If there's a doll running around there, I'm
No.
out.
Yeah.
I'm out.
Yeah.
Every episode, there's a doll. He's got something over his head, like the pillow, like a 5-year-old child.
Hey, it
Yeah,
helps.
remember when-
It helps.
You remember when Annabelle came out and they were giving that, like, they were showing the preview for it all the time?
Yeah.
I'm like, yep,
You
just doing
can't.
its
Yeah.
Or that Ghost Adventures episode with the Doll Island, or I don't know what it's called.
Oh,
Can't watch
yeah.
it. Can't we went through that whole series, and then on that episode I skipped it. She goes, "Oh, why'd you skip that
Yeah,
episode?" I'm
right.
like, you know why I skipped that episode. Can't watch that thing. Okay.
No, they are creepy.
Yeah.
They just don't bother me the way they bother you.
Yeah.
Well, I think it has a little bit to do with so my grandmother, she was curandera, she was native,
Mhm.
and I talked to a lot of different people, elders in our community, and you know, sometimes depending on what you believe, they could capture souls inside of them and be animated with other people's souls. And ever since I heard that as a kid, forget it. I
Yeah.
can't even wrap my head around that. But anyway, so on the last show, or was it the last show? I'm not sure which one it was. But recently in the High Strangeness, you guys talked a little bit about SpaceX and getting duped on that
Oh,
yeah.
on that launch. So I think was it your story, Michelle, where you
Yeah.
guys were out, I think, getting pizza or something
Yeah.
like that?
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So needless to say, I know a lot of people got duped by that thing,
Yeah,
but
there were a lot of Facebook posts
Yeah.
like, "What
Oh,
is
yeah.
this?"
yeah, it sucked. But and maybe I'll pivot this one to Eric. What is I guess what are one of those things that you swore was not real, but having since done this show has kind of caused you to turn the page a little bit,
Something that I swore wasn't real.
or that you just, or I guess not real, but that you just didn't have a lot of belief in, but it's kind of starting to make you change your mind just a bit.
I don't know. I actually feel like I've always been I've always kind of believed, you know,
Okay.
there's never been anything that like I haven't ever believed in. I've always believed in ghosts because I feel like I've had experiences since I was very
Mhm.
young.
Sure.
And again, I think it's because our uncle and our father, you know, they had us, or they didn't have us watching these shows, but we would watch these shows with them, that we always kind of, you know, believed in these things. You know, we never,
Right. Is there maybe a topic that's strengthened a lot more since doing it?
no, like I said, I think the only thing, I think if anything, maybe like the Bigfoot topic.
Sure.
Mhm.
Yeah,
And
Yeah, of
cryptids,
course.
like some of those, I think have actually gone the other way, where I'm like, I don't know, like I'm a little bit more skeptical about those things,
Right.
I agree.
you know, instead of like ghosts and stuff and aliens. I'm like aliens for sure, because we can't be the only
Mhm.
living things
Yes.
in this universe.
Absolutely.
Ghosts, just because I've had so many experiences. I think the cryptids, for me personally, are a little bit not hard to believe, but I don't immediately 100% believe anything like those kinds of things. And then especially with the way stuff is nowadays, people can doctor things and,
Oh, sure.
you know,
Oh,
make
yeah.
videos. So it just, I think it makes it harder for people to believe now.
Yeah. And it's funny because I'm with you a little bit on cryptids. Well, I should say on certain cryptids.
Mm-hmm.
But then sometimes I'm like, of all paranormal topics, I feel like that's one of the ones that we really have some physical, tangible evidence. And the reason I say that is like the giant squid. For the longest time, that was a cryptid. Nobody ever thought it existed. And then somebody's down there with the camera, and guess what? We got a giant squid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then like the Komodo dragon, the island of Komodo, everybody said, well, there was no such thing. And then of course they go on the island and find tons of these things. So it's like, you're right. I'm with you on the cryptid because things like, I mean, we even did a show on it, but like the Michigan dog man,
Yeah,
you
but
know, it's,
with that though,
Yeah,
now
here
that
we
we've
go,
well, we've learned so many more things about the whole extraterrestrial
Yeah,
alien
that's
thing.
true.
that now they're saying that could be what that stuff is, and
Yeah.
not actually like animals of this earth. So where do you go with that? You
That's
know,
true.
is it actually a cryptid or is it just an extraterrestrial?
Yeah.
We don't know.
See what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, then, and I go even, you know, further, like, yes, like, obviously aliens is, like, one thing, but then, you know, I hear, especially natives talking about, like, nature spirits and, you know, things like that, and then you can add that layer of just different dimensions and things being able to, like, hop into and out of,
Right.
and it's like, all right, well, shit, I don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
We're never gonna know.
Yeah.
That's the
It's the journey.
Yeah.
So is that your is that same to you on that, Michelle? As far as kind of what
Yeah.
may have changed or
Yeah, I think probably also cryptids just because I mean like I could say like Nessie, like Loch Ness monster, I'm like no, but like Bigfoot, I'm still like no, I think there's something there.
Right.
You know, chupacabras, like we did a deep dive on that, and kind of I feel like we debunked that for ourselves a little bit, but
Yeah.
I still very much believe that there are creatures or things that like we don't know about that maybe are just kind of dimension hopping, that so we only see it for a split second, or you know only certain people can see it and things like that, but yeah.
Right. Okay, so I got to ask this question because I know at least when we were on your show, the ending question, this is not the end, but the ending question that you normally ask people were, would you ever use a Ouija board?
Yeah.
And I now saw or heard a deep dive that somebody gave it a shot. So what? How'd that go?
Yeah. It was kind of a bummer, I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
Just because, I mean, so yeah, I went to this workshop. I guess I probably should have known when they used the word workshop that we would be actually working with the Ouija board, but I went in thinking like, oh, I'm just gonna learn about it, and they did. They went into like mega deep dive as far as how it started to, like, you know, how it came to be. And then I think the main thing or the main issue was that I was not a fan of like the group that I was in, and not necessarily that these people were you know mean or bad or gave off like a bad vibe or anything. It was just that they were kind of forced to do it. Like they didn't actually want to do it. They were there for like the podcast that was being recorded that, you know, was kind of watching play out. And they're like, well, you guys make a group. And they're like, we're literally recording devices and stuff. Like they weren't expecting it. So I feel like they were already kind of not into it. And I was the only one in the group. And then once we kind of finally got in a flow, they added a person who got here like 30 minutes late. And she was like super disruptive, like energetically, I feel like. And also, I'm usually like always try and be on time. So when someone's like uber late, I'm just already annoyed.
Yeah,
Sure.
I get that.
So once we started actually using the board, like you could see like she's like shoving the planchette, like it's supposed to be light touching, and so you're trying to be nice to strangers, so you can't really be mean, and you don't want to attract anything negative, so you're trying to be like, okay, like light, bright, you know, like protection, all this stuff.
Sure.
And so I feel like the answers that we got were just as chaotic as all our energies combined.
Yeah.
You know, we did get a few things that like he was first or to die. His name, he spelled out Vlad. And so I was like, was he the first to die, or was he the first vampire, Vlad the
Yeah,
Impaler?
it's just about thinking.
I know. I was like, oh.
That's kind of like what came together for me after with what little we could get. But I thought it was hilarious that I feel like it was getting so frustrated with everyone kind of talking over each other and not really like in it, that it just like the thing slid aggressively to goodbye.
Oh yeah,
And then
for sure.
And then they're like, okay, no, like try again. You can keep asking questions. So we're like, okay. So we I think we did like one or two, and it just like was moving randomly across the board, and it was like goodbye, like aggressively back to goodbye. And those are the only two times that I'm like, all right, I think that was real. Like
Yeah.
that felt
Yeah.
like something. But I think because of the environment, I didn't feel. Well, I didn't want to be scared anyways to begin with, because I don't want to bring in something negative. You know, I do think that your intention is going to set up, you know, the success or failure of a Ouija board session. So,
100%.
yeah, I was like, I just kind of like let it say goodbye. And said out loud, I probably shouldn't have. I was like, yeah, it's probably like, fuck these guys. I don't know what the fuck they're doing.
Yeah, right.
But that's what it felt
Super
like.
annoyed.
Yeah. I was like, or maybe it was like my energy just been like, fuck this, and like saying goodbye. Who knows?
Sure. I mean,
I'm sorry, I was cussing too. Is that okay?
oh,
No, you're
Like,
fine.
beat
no,
me.
no, you're good. You're good. Don't sweat that.
But
That shit's fine with us.
Yeah.
This entire time I've been trying not to cuss, and then Michelle's like, she said multiple, and I was like, dude, I don't know if we're supposed to be cussing or not, and then she just dropped like 4 F-bombs. I was like,
No,
oh man.
Oh, my face got all red. Sorry.
You're
So did
good.
mine.
Don't worry
good.
about it.
And I was like a sailor.
I think the only reason why I think that sometimes I have a little into the cap of Logan. I have a job where I speak in front of a lot of people. I'm a network engineer, but I'm senior network engineer, so I got to do things with like C-level people and explain things and go through things, and I've just got it like ingrained in my head to to not cuss until I walk out the door and go, motherfuckers.
Yeah.
But I don't do that while I'm talking to them, So no, it has nothing to do with editing or anything like that. It's just I guess I just don't do it by nature until I'm around people I feel comfortable with.
Yeah.
Well, same. I mean, I used to have, I feel like, not so much anymore, an off switch because I would work with children every day. So could be, total, like, no cuss words at all whatsoever. But the moment I got home, it's like, let me just get it out of my system because I've been...
So the same. Yeah. I work with kids. Same thing. I like turn it on and turn it off.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Earmuffs, cockballs.
Yeah.
But,
pretty much.
So, no, it's cool. So do you count that as an experience, or do you kind of say that as like experience light?
I feel like it doesn't count. Because it wasn't. Well, one, I wasn't really kind of like almost ready for it, or I wasn't expecting it. I was like, screw it, like let's do this. But I definitely, if anything, it just made me want to try it again and really do it now, but with, a group of people that I feel comfortable with and trust and know that they're not going to bring anything, negative. And even if something spooky kind of like did come through, that we're going to be able to like close that and shut that down and be okay.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
I would feel that's the way you'd have to do it. Like you'd have to have energy that you felt comfortable with other people.
Yeah, I'd super have to trust people.
Yeah. And those things always go like that, no matter what the activity is. Like, it always like ruins the experience, I think.
Yeah. I'm
just one of those guys that if I'm gonna fuck things up, I'm not gonna do it if it's something I can get for clearance on Walmart.
Yeah.
That's just kind of my thing. By the way, gloves are off. Let's just go.
Yeah, right.
Sounds good.
But
I caught that.
Yeah, we're good. So Eric, is that still a nope for you?
Yeah, I think so. Just because of what Michelle was saying, I have very intrusive thoughts. I think I mentioned this on the episode where we had you guys on. Is I have very intrusive thoughts. So I could go in there with the intention that I'm not gonna be negative or I'm gonna try and be protecting myself and stuff, but my mind's just gonna start going. And I'm just going to start thinking things that I'm not supposed to, or start thinking really negative things, because that's always what my mind does. And I'm afraid to, mess that up for everybody else. So, that's basically it. It's also the trust thing. Like I don't tend to trust people very easily.
Sure.
So especially with something like that, like I don't want to mess with something that could, because I've had really horrible experiences in this house, and I don't want to invite anything like that back here, So I that's why I'm very apprehensive about it, and so it's still a no for me. Maybe I have gotten a little bit better as far as like I don't see it completely as a negative thing anymore. Now it's just it's me being afraid of. Like having those, exactly,
for sure. I mean, and I'll be honest with you, I'm definitely in that camp too, because I think
am still,
I think I would find myself leaning towards some of that negativity, and I'm not a negative person by nature, but I think because
That stuff's drawn to me.
Yeah.
I feel like I'm just putting myself out there
Yeah.
to receive it.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. So
Yeah.
I get that. Yeah.
Yeah, I would just be afraid that I'd do something really stupid. And then next thing you know, I've got to cleanse a house for 4.5 years because of something dumb I did or worse, you know. But
Yeah.
I will say.
well, I'm glad.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, good. No, good. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that I feel like I've done a lot of other workshops, I guess, or other just spiritual work where I'm like, okay, like I can be divinely protected and call in, whether it's my ancestors, angels, like all these gods and goddesses, or like whoever I want to call in, create my own little like safety bubble. And having learned those kind of protective things, I feel, I don't want to say less scared. There's always a little bit of like fear there, but I've come to realize that even things that I used to fear, even before we started this podcast, like as we've done it, throughout the years, I'm like, oh, it's really not that bad, or, it doesn't have to be as scary as we think it is. It's just, I think watching horror movies and stuff like that, like we hype it up a little bit, and
Sure.
It's really not as bad as
The Exorcist.
I don't want to. Yeah, and like
Yeah.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that there isn't evil out there as far as
Yeah.
like where the spirits, demons, whatever you want to call them. But I think that whether they're just misunderstood or we just don't know how to react to them, or they don't know how to
Right.
communicate with us. Like I think those are the biggest issues. Like that's where the fear starts, and it doesn't have to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's somewhere, and it's funny you say that because that's somewhere I'd like to be someday. I feel like
Yeah.
this is part of the journey that we're on with this, is that I'm kind of getting a little bit more into the woods. I had a brain bleed about a couple of years ago, and it was almost out the door for me. And since that happened, I've kind of tried to make sense of a lot of different things, and try to understand things differently than maybe I had before. And that's one of those I'd like to get a little bit better grip with, because I feel like I'd like to be in that headspace, where I could do something like that. But I just feel like with the Ouija board, I don't think I feel safe enough for myself to put myself in that situation. And I think that's definitely a goal for me to get to that point.
And I was raised in Missouri, where The Exorcist actually happened.
Yeah, exactly.
And my family were from St. Louis, so I've heard all about that whole thing
Yeah.
growing up. So I think it's just that fear still of don't do that.
Yeah.
And I told you about what happened to my brother
Yeah.
when he was a kid. So it's like don't do it, or this will happen. And it's just in me now, that fear. But I would like to learn a little bit more. Because it's just a board. It's just a device. I mean, you can really use anything.
Yeah, divination tools
Yeah.
are divination tools.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
It's the stigma.
It is
Yeah.
a stigma.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, question for you, Eric, about, and I hope it's okay. And if you need to tell me to pound sand when I ask this, it's fine. But being you're in a career field, and because we talked earlier that I kind of share that in common with you, having been a medic. Do you find it more difficult, at least for me, I know I can say this because it's sort of how I rationalize things. I have a very scientific, analytical mind. Weights, measurements, things like that, they all serve a purpose for me. And sometimes, especially with what I do and how I believe, it's really hard sometimes to live in both worlds. Do you find that to be kind of difficult for yourself too, where especially in the medical field where everything kind of has a role and everything's got a part and there's very calculated measurements for everything, but there's still that question mark,
Yeah. So I don't think I have. I don't feel like I ever really have. When I was a little bit more on so we grew up Catholic. I mean, I still call myself a Catholic, but I'm not very Catholic. And
Watered down Catholic.
yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I still I still have faith. I believe in God, and I believe in other things as well. So like I've always had kind of like the idea that God guides us, kind of thing.
Sure.
So I remember one time when I was doing clinicals, when I was going to school still, we were in the ER doing our rotation in the ER, and we had code blue. So we're there watching the nurses and the doctors and everybody work on this patient. They actually had us jump in to do chest compressions and stuff. So I actually did chest compressions on an actual person in clinicals, which was crazy. Then when we go back to at the end of the day, we would always have this thing where we would talk to people. Like we would get in our group of students and we would discuss what we did throughout the day. And because they had heard the code blue, they knew that we were in there, and that's why we were late. So we started discussing what happened. And then I remember this one girl mentioned that sometimes she feels that when we work on patients and we bring them back, we're going against God's will. And I told her, and this is how I felt then. And now discussing other things that we've discussed about angels with Michelle, like she also helped me even more, like kind of solidify this way of thinking. Was I expressed that, how do you know it's not God that's working through us to bring those people back to life? Maybe it wasn't their time to go and we brought them back because that's what he wanted, you know?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think that's how I kind of rationalize it. Like, I know a lot of times it is very science-based, and when people say, well, I'm just going to pray this sickness away, and I was like, well, that's not how that works. You know what I mean? You still need to go to a medical professional. Now, you can pray to get better, and through going to those medical professionals, the answer will come and they can heal you, and you can look at it as God was working through them to heal you. But just sitting at home and praying your sickness away, a lot of times I don't feel is gonna help. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that's how, like, I kind of bring those two things together. So yeah, and the way Michelle helped me was there's the Archangel Raphael is like he's supposed to be the healer. So she told me one time that, and then later on I read this as well, that he might not heal you directly, but he'll give you the answer, or he'll give you a sign. Like it could be that a book fell down and opened up to a certain page, or you pulled that book and you open it to a certain page and the answer's there. You know, it's just, you have to sometimes interpret the things that you're seeing, and people can just say, well, that's just, you know, a coincidence. It just happened. It's like, well, you believe what you want, you know, but this is my belief.
Right.
It helps me, you know, understand what's going on. So that's what it is, you know?
Yeah, for sure. And especially, you know, having shows on the paranormal and just being in that same space, nothing's black and white. Everything's, you know, you're right. There's so many different things you can glean from a lot of different situations. And I totally get that, as far as being like, you know, it doesn't mean that you're not being guided by another, by someone else, you know, whether that be God, whether that be, you know, for anybody who has, you know, whatever religious belief you have, that you can still be, you know, a channel, at least a tool for a higher being, or something that is maybe not there in physicality, but is helping you heal and helping you do the things you do.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. Pretty powerful stuff. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of getting a little bit towards the end, but I got to ask, where this is the interview questions, you know, you get like when you're sitting for a job, right? So where do you see the show going, and what are some of the directions that, do you guys have a kind of an idea of where you'd like to see it go, or do you just kind of want to keep, I know you mentioned you guys would do it if there was nobody listening, and I'm sure we'd do the same. Is it something you guys want to just continue in the form that it's in, or are you looking to do anything else, or what's kind of the vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's already changed so much from where we started. We're always open to you know, new ideas, new approaches, and I kind of feel like we're getting into that, like another sort of transition. I don't know what it is or what it's going to be, but it kind of feels like it's coming, or it needs to happen. Maybe that is doing video, and I'll have to put effort on and like put makeup on and whatnot. But
Yep.
yeah, it's, I don't know. I mean, yeah, like I had mentioned, I think we would still do this regardless if people were listening or not. Like I do genuinely enjoy, you know, doing these topics. Sometimes it's like, you know, we have a whole bunch of other stuff. Life is asking you to do, but it's really nice to do like this at least an hour, 2 hours of like, no, this is my dedicated time to talk about something that I really enjoy talking about. Like, I want to do it. So, yeah, I don't know. Obviously, growth, blowing up would be great. As always, more listeners,
Sure.
you know, all that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. But
Well, we're working
yeah.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Help each other out.
Yeah,
Yes.
for sure.
Well, on that note, we so we're big fans, and we remember an episode, I believe, is episode 100, and it was Dia de los Muertos.
Nice.
And and I'll be honest with you, and this is kind of a sore spot for me. I wish I would know more about it because I am brown-skinned man, and I wish I should. I wish that I would have dedicated more memory for that, and I did not. But that's okay because I think we have somebody that can help us with that. So for our listeners, you know, I think we're gonna go ahead and give it a shot. We're gonna try something live, and I think you guys are gonna come along for the ride, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Awesome. So with that, I think with some of the stuff I don't want to do on there, and you know, your listeners are more than welcome. And we're going to give all this information out at the end of our show here, but info@gxparanormal.com. I think what we're going to have people do is submit anything that they want to talk about. Especially, I think how we're going to talk about it is: have you had any family members that have passed on that have reached out to you and spoken to you? And I know both of you have had that, and absolutely we have too. But just kind of talk about that, and then probably going to lean pretty heavy on you guys as far as the history and kind of for that, because
Especially not me. I don't know anything.
actually she probably knows more than I do, which is
No,
horrible.
I don't. All I know is from Coco, and that's not
Oh my
telling
gosh.
anything.
Well,
Yeah.
actually,
It's pretty accurate.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
is it?
yeah.
Okay.
If you want
Well-
a starter, definitely go watch that.
Yeah.
And I have seen it, so at least
I love
I
it.
feel like
I
I'm
think
a little
it's
bit
great.
more knowledgeable about it
Yeah.
anyway. But it'll be on November 2nd at 7 p.m. Central State. So yeah.
I'll be asleep.
Let me
Yeah,
finish.
like-
Thursday,
thank you.
November 2nd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time.
See what I
There
mean?
you go.
But no, it'll be live on YouTube, and you know, we're looking forward to that. Hopefully, you guys want to come in and just take the reins with us, and we're gonna have a pretty good time, I think.
Yeah, for sure.
It's
But,
it's been a good time both these times, so I'm sure
Yeah. It will.
Yeah.
we'll have
It will
another
be
good
again.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. But in closing, anything you want to add to it?
I don't think so.
Well,
I'm sure it'll all come out on the live.
Oh, yeah.
the live episode. We'll save some of it.
yeah, I can't wait for that. That should be interesting. I mean, even if we have one person watching, I don't really care. It'll just be a good time. So,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but anyway, hey guys, thanks a lot. You know, we always have a blast. I'd love to do this again sometime. You know, we can still keep doing back and forth if you want or
For sure.
whatever, but maybe we can make a thing of this live thing if it works out, whatever, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
But at any rate, thanks again. And
There is one thing that you can tell them.
what's that?
The update about our house visitor.
Oh, the lady?
The lady.
Mhm.
Oh,
Jinx.
go ahead.
Oh.
No, I didn't see anything, so you have to tell them
Which part are you talking about?
on our anniversary, the night before our anniversary. I have to tell you.
Okay. See,
See,
this is why she keeps me around.
Oh my gosh.
Okay, so in our man, now it's gonna freak me out. So in our bedroom, we've got those candles that you can put the AA batteries in and then turn on.
Okay.
You get that really cool,
Oh,
like
okay.
kind of
Flickering
flicker
light,
going
yeah.
on.
mm-hmm.
Well, keep in mind these things have been in our room for years. Okay, batteries. I didn't even know if they worked, but I think she had changed them out once. But on our anniversary, and we have had we've lost a family member fairly, or I shouldn't say, pretty. What about a few weeks prior to that, right?
No,
No,
it's a couple months.
couple months. Anyway, see, that's how good I am. But you know, it was our first anniversary after that, and I would say, what about 2 a.m. or something like that? I can't remember what time it was.
I don't know because I was asleep. That's why I
But
can't tell.
You ever get that feeling like something's not quite right? And I remember kind of opening my eyes and I look over, and one of those stinking lights is on, just flickering.
Oh, no.
Nope.
And it was on my side, and my side is where our visitor is, which is fine. Again, we've talked about it. We have a great relationship.
Remember, blink twice if you need help.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, it turned on. It freaked me out. I mean, it's actually doing now, but every hair on my arm stood up on end, and I'm like, okay. So you start running through your mind. Okay, so what's the chances of that? You know, could it happen? And I'm not even a big fan of those, like, you know, you watch all the ghost hunters where they take the mag lights and they just barely unscrew it. And then, I don't know, for me, someone could probably tell me differently, but I'm not a big fan of that because there's just too many variables in that, you know? But that one, when you turn it, you have got to work on it. It's kind of got like a rubbery feel to it.
It's like got real wax on the outside to make it look like it's a real candle.
Right. And
it doesn't want to stay shut. Like it wants to like push out, like pop all the batteries out.
Right.
Yeah.
So it wouldn't just happen like that. So yeah, that's our update, and it scared the hell out of me. I'm not gonna lie. And it was our anniversary, and it was just
the next day.
It was the next day, and it was one of those things where I was like, should I tell her? Should I keep this to myself? And then I'm like, I'm too freaking scared to keep this shit to myself, so I'm just gonna tell her. And it freaked me out. And kind of tailing back a little bit, my brain bleed was on our anniversary a few years ago. So it was like, in my mind, the way I kind of compartmentalized that a little bit was her saying, "You're okay."
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And that's what gave me at least the ability to not freak out and have more comfort in it, because it's always in the back of my mind that, you know, is this going to happen again to me someday? And, you know, I deal with that stuff all the time, which, let me tell you something, that's a whole nother show. But anyway, it just, that's kind of how I rationalized it. It was just a way of being comforting, saying, hey, everything's cool. Don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean, yeah, and even hearing you say the story, like, I was like, well, what if it was the loved one that you guys lost kind of saying happy anniversary too, you know?
It could have been.
Like, it's obviously creepy to wake up to a light that should not be on. Like, all that is weird, but for some reason it didn't have like a spooky vibe as far as like, or negative, I guess, feelings to it. Yeah, spooky, but not negative.
Spooky.
Yeah.
No.
Well, and when I woke up, you told me about, he didn't remember it was our anniversary, by the way. When he told me about it, and I said, well, it's our anniversary today. He's like, oh, that must be what it's for.
That's what that is. Yeah.
I knew it was our anniversary.
He didn't.
Oh my gosh.
It's been 17 years. He gets a pass.
gosh.
I mean, it's been a long time. But it was just funny because he was so freaked out about it. Nothing has happened in a long time.
Yeah.
So for that to just randomly happen the night before,
Yeah.
it was a little weird.
It was very weird.
But not bad. Like I said before, I don't get any. I thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, now we have another thing to talk about coming on November the 2nd.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Well, I got several. Yeah.
I know.
So,
It'll be fun.
yeah, it will be fun.
For sure.
All right, guys. Hey, thanks a lot for hanging out with us for a while. I know we could probably talk for another 4 hours, but yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for jumping on with us.
Oh, thanks
for
for
having
having
us
us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully we look forward to doing it again sometime.
Definitely.
November
Soon.
2nd.
November 2nd.
November
Yep.
2nd. All right, thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Wow.
It was fun.
That was a lot of fun. They're always so
I
much
always
fun
like
to talk
talking to them.
Yeah. You know, and I don't know if you guys kind of picked up on it. We just have a very good back and forth. We have a great banter with them, so they're a lot of fun to talk to. And I hope you guys enjoyed it just as much as we did, because we're gonna team up again. So if you hadn't caught it in the episode, we are going to do a live Dia de los Muertos, and which would be Day of the Dead in English. But if you don't know what that is, of course, it's popularized with Coco.
Coco.
Yeah. If you haven't watched the Disney movie, but Eric and Michelle, they are of Mexican descent, and I am as well. And I'm very happy that they're going to be there with us because I really don't know as much as I should, and I wish I had more knowledge of it. But that's kind of what this show is going to be about. It's going to be about learning about what this celebration is. I think there's a lot of misunderstood things with this particular celebration that isn't quite I think what mass people believe or just kind of think it is. But there's a lot to it, and we're really excited about it. So it will be on November 2nd at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, and it will be on YouTube. And there's a few different ways you can submit stories. Oh, yeah, by the way, we want you guys to submit stories. If you're listening, please, by all means, this is a chance for you to kind of talk about loved ones reaching out to you that have passed. And that's kind of what this celebration is.
Honoring our ancestors.
Right. Honoring ancestors that have passed. And there's a lot more that you'll learn about it, like ofrendas and things like that.
Basically, like the veil, thins, and they're able to come back and visit you on Day of the Dead, is the way I understand it. Or
That's the way I understand it, too.
The way Coco.
Yeah, the way Disney made us understand it. Is
Yeah.
it Disney?
Or DreamWorks or
DreamWorks,
something.
yeah. Anyway,
well, they're both kind of the same thing.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Anyway, but yeah, it's honoring them, and they come back on that day because that's the only day they're able to visit their family.
Right.
So, yeah, we want to know.
Yeah.
Has your family member visited you?
Yeah.
Do you have any stories? Whether that be in dreams or, whatever the situation may be. But there's several ways.
Yep.
So you can either email us, info@gxparanormal.com, and you can put it in the subject line, just Day of the Dead, so we know that's what it's about.
Right.
You can submit your name. You don't have to submit your name. You can write your story, whatever it is you want us to share on the show. We can also, there's a chat.
Right. On YouTube, there'll be a chat, and it won't be like, subscribers only or anything like that. It'll be open for everybody. And if you're not familiar with YouTube, typically when you click on the live tile or thumbnail, I should say, it'll pop open with, especially if you're on a computer, it'll be on the right-hand side. And I think even on mobile, it'll be on the bottom if you're watching it. So you can chat in there, which is going to be difficult because it's going to be hard to kind of get a lot of story out. But even if you want to drop by and say hi, by all means, do that too. So that's one way you can reach out to us. In addition to that, at the bottom of this video, or in the subject of this video, the information of it, I'm going to provide a link in which you can actually call in to the session that we're going to be on. It's a public session, but that's going to be for folks that want to be heard because you're going to be on the show. And it might be exciting too. Maybe you want to talk about something that you haven't before. And we're open for that. And I know Michelle and Eric are excited about that too. So, anybody in their audience, anybody in our audience, heck, anybody you can get to come, that's fine too. But yeah, that's we're really looking forward to that. It's something exciting that we put together with Michelle and Eric, and it's a good collaboration between our two shows, and hopefully not the last one too.
Yeah, we'd like to do more with them.
Yeah.
But once again, it's Thursday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. That's Central Standard Time.
That's right. Look forward to having you there. And with that, again, it was awesome to talk to them. And hopefully you guys, follow their podcast because they're a great podcast. They've been doing it for a very long time, a little longer than us. And they've got a great, library of shows from the past. So by all means, check them out. And other than that, we'll see you guys soon.
See you next soon.
Take care, guys.